Karol Nowakowski. And let's see. So I'm not a sociologist. I'm not an anthropologist. And only by the most tortured definition of the word am I a linguist. I'm an engineer, and I'm currently doing my master's research in natural language processing. And with that in mind, I'd like to present our work on overcoming technological barriers to language revitalization. So first off, I just want to give a little bit of trivia. So in Japanese, there are no purely native Japanese words that begin with R sound, so da-hi-du-da-do. There are a lot of words in Japanese that do begin with it, like ramen, like raishu, dajio. What we'll find is that they always come from another language or made from parts of words from other languages. Like raishu the lai comes from the Chinese word lai. Dajio, of course, comes from English. And then there's the word Nago, which means sea otter, which comes from Ainu. And with that in mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Ainu language, Ainuitak. And so I think in this room, I don't need to introduce too comprehensively who the Ainu people are. But I do want to talk a little bit about the extent of historical Ainu culture and present Ainu culture, of course. So the filled in red area here is the attested, documented, contemporaneously extent of Ainu culture, which is of course, Hokkaido, Sakhalin, and the Kurils. But this filled in pink area here is the suspected historical extent, which goes far down into Honshu. So today, when people think of Ainu, they tend to think of Hokkaido and perhaps these northern islands as well. But historically, it is also a Honshu language. In fact, if you can see these red dots here, these red dots are place names that are believed to have come from the Ainu language. The purple dots are Matagi villages, and the Matagi people, I don't know much about Matagi people personally, but they have culture and dialect that is heavily influenced from, or perhaps descended from, Ainu. But despite this historical, quite broad extent of Ainu culture, there's been a serious decline in the number of Ainu language speakers. And this goes back to long before the Meiji era, which began in 1868. So even before the Meiji era, many Ainu people were pushed into working for Japanese traders for the Matsumaya clan in fisheries. This is largely due to the depletion of the resources that they depended on in their own homes, and as a result of working in packed fisheries and frequent, closely packed exposure to people who frequented the Honshu, Japan, they were exposed to every epidemic that burned through Japan, but without the centuries of built-up immunity that many Japanese people had. And so just over 47 years, from 1807 to 1854, the Hokkaido Ainu population fell by 43%. And this is before Meiji. Now, in the Meiji era, the Meiji era began right after a smallpox vaccination campaign throughout Hokkaido. So, fortunately, the mass deaths due to disease epidemics that struck about every 20 years ended. But there were further constraints placed by the new Meiji imperial rule. namely the Ainu culture and culture and language were banned in most respects. So anything from growing a beard in the traditional Ainu fashion, to hunting with Ainu arrows, to teaching their children the Ainu language was banned. In the current era, this is no longer the case, but there are very few, if any, native Ainu speakers living today. The UNESCO found over a decade ago that there were some small number of native speakers still living. There's not been any published survey since then. I suspect that number is likely 0 today. However, that doesn't mean that there are no people who can speak Ainu. In fact, I believe that there is a growing interest in learning, teaching, and using Ainu. Okay. So, according to UNESCO, roughly every 2 weeks, a language dies. And over the course of this century, up to 40% of currently existing languages are expected to disappear. The vast majority of those are indigenous languages. And so that brings me to our work. So today, as a native English speaker, I take a lot of things for granted. For one thing, I can use resources such as Wikipedia to learn about anything I want. I can use a word processor, and the word processor helps me write in my own language. I can just talk to my computer and tell it to write something for me. I can set my phone to my language. In fact, I've set my phone to Japanese in my early days of learning that language, and it helped me a lot to immerse myself. And whenever I can't do something in my own language, I can always translate it to English. Of course, for Ainu, this is very much not the case, and I imagine for virtually every indigenous language in the world, this is not the case. So I, with my colleagues and my advisor, am working to develop tools that can be used for the Ainu language by people who want to learn and use the Ainu language today in a modern context. And the process of tool development takes ideally this 4-step cycle. So the first step is to develop a corpus. And that corpus is to be used to develop tools. So going back, tools such as, say, spell check, on-Mac translators, voice typing, and so on. These tools need to then be evaluated by experts in the Ainu community. And in working in collaboration with these experts, we can improve the tools and then release them for practical use. And then, once these tools are as good as they can get, we can then use those tools to continue to develop the corpus. And I'll give a concrete example of that in the next few slides. So first off, I'd like to talk about some of the earliest NLP work in the Ainu language, which is my advisor's work. He developed in 2012 an Ainu part of speech tagger. And he did that by starting with this dictionary of Ainu folklore, which he digitized and converted into a kind of a database format that encoded the word, the part of speech, the translation, and other information. So part of speech, of course, is, for example, verbs, nouns. There are no adjectives in the Ainu language, but if there were adjectives, that would be a part of speech. This this database would be used to produce an application that takes in sentences in the Ainu language and outputs a user-friendly tagged version of the sentence. So for example, here we can see that it tags this as a personal pronoun, or rather a personal affix, a verb, specifically transitive verb, and so on. And Novakovsky then went on to develop a more unified and expansive corpus of the Ainu language. And this includes 215 documents composed of about 410,000 words of text from sources such as folklore and various dictionaries, and also tools have been developed by other linguists in this area. Very notably for me, Dr. Anna Bageva, who is the person I reached out to when I said I wanted to do work in this field. Who do I talk to? She directed me to my advisor. Now for this next slide, I'm actually going to pull up the notes. I don't think this is an expanded view, so you're going to see my notes here. But Carol very helpfully provided his words here. Let's see, how do I bring those up? Okay, so I don't have those. so I'm just going to go off of memory here. Okay, so a lot of resources in not just the Ainu language, but in endangered languages in general, and or I should say low resource languages in general, because Ainu is a low resource language, is that there is definitionally very little textual resources, very little recorded resources, recorded instances of the language. There's a very small corpus, and much of it is on obsolete media, such as this magnetic tape here. A lot of these magnetic tapes were in turn developed from old wax cylinders. And these obsolete media forms are in danger of either degrading just with time, with being thrown away, whether by accident or after, for example, the professor in possession of them retires, or just in general, in any way, becoming less accessible, less useful, or completely lost. So, okay, yeah. So let's go through these points here. So he's working with right now speech data. So transcription of speech data is time-consuming, and as a result, invaluable primary data not fully utilized. And I can say I've listened to some of these recordings. I personally think that this probably takes more than an hour to transcribe with 1 minute of that, of these particular tapes that he's working with right now. It's very degraded. So he's currently working with working to develop automatic speech transcription technology for the Ainu language. I believe that right now he's working with the Karato dialect. And through doing this can not only help to preserve the data itself, but also put it in a more immediately usable format, text. Okay, and that brings me to my work. So I am currently in my first year of my program. So I've been working on this since October, and much of that time has just been learning how to do these things, but I've been very happy with the progress so far. So the existing Ainu corpus is largely split between two scripts, which is Japanese katakana and the Latin alphabet. It has historically also been written in other scripts such as Cyrillic, but today is largely katakana and the alphabet, and both are in use today. The katakana script is used to present the phonetic pronunciation, which is not directly translatable to the more phonemic or morphemic transcription that is shown in the Latin text. Conversion from Latin alphabet to katakana is fairly straightforward within bounds. You can broadly construct some rules set for word boundaries so that words will change their pronunciation depending on what comes before or after. But conversion from katakana to alphabet is difficult, and as an example of this, I show the katakana word yaidaike, which can be either yaidaike, which means think, or yaidaike, which means to commit suicide. The difference is entirely in whether this Y, or this second I or Y, depending on which one is written in, is a consonant, closing a syllable, or a syllable in its own right. And so, since the corpus is largely split between these two scripts, converting all text that is currently existing only in one script to the other script and vice versa can significantly expand the corpus of text for developing tools. And so here we can see the tool I've developed over the past few months, which takes this Ainu sentence, Tuima hiwae kwa hioioi, pirikano nu karatian, which means thank you for coming from so far, take a good look. And we can see some examples of what is not immediately obvious from the katakana here. For example, we see the word ek has some punctuation in the middle that marks personal affix. And we can see in the middle of hi, oi, oi, that there's an apostrophe that marks that the Y is not the beginning of a syllable, but rather the end of one. And I'm currently working with an Ainu language expert to evaluate the output of this tool and improve the tool. And in so doing, I hope to also improve the corpus itself, because there are various human errors throughout the corpus, and through this process of determining what is correct and what is not correct in the transcriptions, we can also correct those errors in the corpus itself. So in the future, after expanding this corpus, there are a lot of things I hope that we can develop from here. So one is automatic translation. There are some example kind of a test cases. Let's say experimental models developed to translate between Ainu and Japanese, and I've developed a few of them. And so far it looks promising, and with an expanded corpus, I have high hopes for it. Another issue is that a lot of words that we need to use on a daily basis, computer, phone, draft, every day, don't exist in the Ainu language. And so it would be, okay, so I'm currently at the end of my time, but I'm just gonna rush through the slide. So don't exist, so it would be helpful to have something that can be used as a tool by experts to produce rough draft suggestions for new words. Word processing aids and learning aids, especially learning aids, are something I want to develop. And so with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick, for your first presentation.
Thank you.
Very successful.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
And I have two small questions.
Okay.
One is with what kind of community have you been working for revitalization or to address technical hurdles for behind people to learn their own language?
Okay. So, so you're talking about for the development of these tools in particular, or more broadly? Okay. So.
The question would be like, who are your interlocutors that
Okay.
you're working with? Because you have data, but what individuals are you working with to ask, how do you want to use this tool, and what tools do you want us to develop for your purposes?
Okay. So right now, I'm currently. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I'm currently still in the very early stages. So I'm currently working with only one individual at the moment. His name is Yamamata-san. He lives in, I believe, Shiraoi, and works for Upoboi. I'm hoping to further build a network to not only get more feedback on these ideas and these tools, but also to get new ideas. Because I want to know more directly what difficulties, what barriers there are in using the Ainu language today. So right now, it's one individual, and I'm hoping to grow that network over the course of not only the next year, but throughout my entire research.
Okay, my next question is, I saw you wrote Yanmoshi for Hokkaido in your slide.
Yes.
So it's a very controversial term.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm a professor at Hokkaido University argued and declared Yanmoshi, Hokkaido should be called as Yanmoshi.
Okay.
But the Karafto Ainu Association, he is, the professor is a descendant from the Karafto Ainu. But the Karafto Ainu Association,
Yes.
is opposing to the name of Yanmoshi.
Okay.
So it is. I'm very surprised that one professor from the Ainu argued Hokkaido should be called Yanmoshi, and after that it spread very quickly. So you used the term for Hokkaido.
Yes, it's an easy term to find.
But
Yeah.
the argument between the professor and the community, Palestine community, is ongoing.
Okay. So, if I may ask, is there a less controversial term that refers specifically to the island of Hokkaido?
Yeah. So for me, I use Ainu-moshi for Hokkaido.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Look, you can keep it.